All right. So I woke up today to find a gift. What's his name? Eisel had made a video using my name in it, using actually videos that I'd written, and I found it actually really funny. I especially loved the whole Spongebob Squarepants thing, where it was like it shows me talking about justification on one day, and then it goes to 3 days later, and then it looks like I'm contradicting myself. I thought it was super funny, really enjoyed it. Thank you. Give it like a 9 out of 10. It's really good, really funny. One thought I had though when I was watching it was that this video is a really great opportunity to have a conversation about what justification is, what we mean by justification, and how what one means by justification can often change depending on what the context is in which we're using it. So before we get into that, I'll just start with some examples so that we can get them sort of in the forefront of the conversation. So one thing that Eisel points out is that anybody who's been doing veganism or vegan outreach, vegan activism for more than a couple of minutes is going to have had experiences with people say, like, I just love the taste of meat, and that's why I do it, right? And one thing I learned by watching this video is that actually PCRM is engaged in a fight against animal exploitation industries who are arguing that the pleasure of eating meat outweighs for those people the negative health consequences of it, right? That was super interesting. Now, obviously I don't believe that nobody ever makes that argument, right? And I don't think that anything that I've ever said entails that nobody's ever made that argument. But I do fully understand where he's coming from when he mistakenly thinks that that's what I have said. So let's work through this a little bit. One thing that's happening when we talk about justification, if I say he justified X, he justified eating meat, is that we're saying that a person has committed the speech act of offering what they take to be good reasons in favor of something, right? So suppose that I think that everything that is red is good, and then I point to that car over there and I say that car is red, therefore that car is good, right? I've offered I've offered a justification in that sense, right? In the sense of offering reasons that I take to be good reasons in favor of some conclusion. And that's what's going on in the case of the meat. Somebody is saying, hey, I get pleasure out of this, therefore I can do it, right? But there's another sense of justification where what we're talking about has somebody committed the speech act of attempting to offer reasons that they take to be persuasive in favor of it, but whether they actually succeed in showing that it's morally justified. And in my video, when I talked about, could be justified versus is actually justified, I had that second sense where justification is a success term in mind, right? So what I had in mind was using justified in this sense, where I say that, yeah, there could be some situations where it actually is justifiable. That's what I meant by is justified for somebody to eat meat. But I don't think that those situations are very common. It's not very likely that we're actually going to see them. And as a result of that, I think that even though it could be justified, it actually isn't. However, on this other sense of justified, where we're talking about simply, are there situations where people use sort of utilitarian-ish reasoning, where people think they make some gesture towards consequences, and the consequences are about like pleasure in favor of something that they want to do. Well, yeah, sure, obviously that happens, right? And sort of in this other sense of justification, yeah, no problem. So that's one thing to say. Another thing to say is that just because somebody is talking about consequences and pleasure and making a moral argument based on considerations of consequences and pleasure doesn't mean that they're offering something that it would be right to call a utilitarian argument or utilitarian reasoning, right? Because the thing about utilitarianism is that it's impartial. It involves this commitment to impartiality at the level of a theory of right action, where my pleasure doesn't count any more in terms of the overall good than anybody else's pleasure. And what's going on in the PCRM case is not that the animal exploiters are offering a utilitarian argument, They're offering an argument that has more to do with, like, I don't know, a very narrow consequentialist view that only thinks that the interests of humans matter, or that vastly overinflates the value of the human interests and vastly underinflates the non-human animal interests, right? What's going on isn't that they're looking at the pleasure and pain and death and all that the cows are experiencing and weighing that against everything that the humans experience, and then arguing that overall the good is maximized by eating animals. They're just looking narrowly at human interests and arguing that a particular set of human interests are fostered better by eating meat than by not eating meat, right? And so, again, there's like two things to be said here. One thing to be said is that there are two senses of justification being used. One has to do with a success term. We're talking about, did they successfully offer utilitarian justification? And that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about, like, is justified versus could be justified. Then there's this other sense of justification where it's just like, are you just making the speech act of trying to offer utilitarian justification for something, right? But the other thing to say, that's the first thing to say, that there's that distinction. Second thing to say is that even if we're just thinking about this second activity of trying to see whether somebody is offering a reasons in favor of their view, it's not just because somebody's talking about overall good and consequences doesn't mean that they're doing a utilitarian argument, because in the case of PCRM, it's actually an explicitly anti-utilitarian argument that's being used by the meat industry, because they're denying impartiality. They're being partial towards the interests of humans. And in addition, that's what's going on in the street conversations when somebody says, I can eat meat because I enjoy it. They're rejecting utilitarianism's commitment to impartiality, right? Okay, cool. So I'm going to end this video now. Hope this was helpful. Thank you very much for engaging. And one other thing that Eisel said in his video was that he has some back pain. I think I remember him saying that from the end of the video. If that's the case, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope that you recover. I hope everything works out well, and hope you have a good day. All right, thanks. Bye.